Miles Morales is getting an Iron Spider suit, and it looks amazing. So this is the conclusion to Carnage Reigns, which is basically the fight between Miles Morales and Cletus Kasady, who's normally Carnage, but in this story, he's using the Extrembiote armor. Basically, a piece of the Carnage symbiote combined with Iron Man tech. So, like we finished with the last video, which you'll find down in the description below the like button, basically Miles Morales and the team that he's working with are just fleeing for their lives, because it's the best they can do against Cletus with just this level of power. I mean, the symbiote in and of itself is already immensely capable. When you combine it with Stark tech, now it has energy blasts and all kinds of stuff. So most of this is just damage control. But like we saw at the end of the last video, because of the fact that the Extrembiote armor originated with Iron Man, he's literally been prepping for this. He's been waiting for the time when Cletus Kasady re-emerges with this Extrembiote armor and then starts going on whatever campaign he's been going on, which is why Iron Man shows up here in what's basically a giant mech suit, which looks amazing. You could call it like the Symbiote Buster armor, right? Like the Carnage Buster armor, because it is enough to initially blast Cletus Kasady, but it's not enough to kill him. At the very least, it allows them to buy a moment to kind of consolidate their forces and figure out what they're gonna do next. Here's the problem with all of this. Where Cletus Kasady is initially thought to be defeated by Miles Morales, this is his inexperience talking. One of the things to remember is that Cletus and Carnage have been around for a very long time, and while Cletus Kasady is normally the human who uses the Carnage symbiote, the fact remains he's done all kinds of stuff. So Iron Man knows enough to know that because the Extrembiote suit is one part Iron Man tech combined with the Carnage symbiote, which makes Cletus Kasady incredibly capable, this guy's not going to be taken out in one shot. But in the middle of all this, where it is kind of a momentary reprieve, Miles Morales is impaled by Cletus. So Iron Man does the only thing he can do. He injects nanites into the body of Miles Morales that basically begin the healing process, but in order to do that, it encases him in what initially Iron Man calls a cast, and then says that may not necessarily be the right term. It's really more of a suit. Now, here's the thing to understand. Miles Morales getting this Iron Spider suit is starkly different from when Peter Parker got it. Peter Parker got it is almost kind of a reward, so to speak, for him siding with Iron Man during Civil War. This suit is really more of necessity, right? It has healing components, stuff like that. Iron Man does that all the time. It's just the nature of his suit, right? Like life support and all that kind of stuff. And so with Miles Morales having a whole new host of abilities in addition to his traditional Spider-Man powers, one of the things to keep in mind is that this Iron Spider suit in terms of capabilities seems to very much mirror the suit of Peter Parker. One of the big differences though is that where Peter Parker's suit had its own capabilities, this one comes with the ability to enhance the Venom blast of Miles Morales, the electric shock that he normally dishes out. And so the initial display of Miles along with Iron Man is to blast Cletus with as much energy as they possibly have in an attempt to blow the symbiote off of him. Because what Iron Man realizes here is that because the symbiote is one part tech, and because the Extrembiote has basically infected pretty much all the city of New York, there's almost like a limitless supply of power that the symbiote itself can draw on. So the best they can do is blow it off of Cletus and then try to find a way to keep the two of them separated, which is a chore in and of itself, because Cletus controls the symbiote and the symbiote controls him, right? They are both immensely powerful here. And so what ends up going on is Iron Man realizes the only way to really achieve this is to effectively detonate an EMP from inside of the symbiote itself. The tech in the symbiote will go out, the symbiote's control over any and all tech in the city of New York will go out. But to get inside of that means creating a hole. And that's where he looks to Miles and the rest of Miles' team, kind of like these anti-symbiote guys that are normally villains but are operating as heroes. That's where he looks to them to create this opening. The problem is the situation's complicated even further through a combination of Cletus Kasady's ability to kind of hijack the minds of people who were looking at their phones when the Extrembiote tech was activated, but other people who in fact are using Iron Man suits. Now the way this works is that Cletus was able to basically steal Iron Man suits and then send them over to individuals who were like his most loyal followers. Crazy people on Twitter who were tweeting stuff out where they support him. Literally that's what they were doing, right? Just people on social media who really like him. And so these guys get their own Iron Man suits combined with symbiote tech that almost makes them comparable to Cletus Kasady. And so in the midst of all this, Red Goblin jumps back into the fray. Now we covered this in the last video. Red Goblin is the grandson of the traditional Green Goblin, but the reason why he matters here is because he has the ability to absorb symbiote material. So in effect, he could just seize control of these Iron Man suits, absorb the symbiotes off of them, and now they're just Iron Man suits running around that these guys would have virtually no power over. It's not that that easy to do, and Red Goblin does where he can when he can, but at the end of the day, it really is all just one giant fight against Cletus. And so in essence, the group gets split off into 3 factions. The team that Miles Morales is working with is just doing local damage control, keeping the innocent people from like harming themselves and harming others. The Red Goblin is running around trying to pull the symbiotes off of these Iron Man suits, and Miles and Tony Stark are focusing on Cletus Kasady himself. Each one of them are successful in their own way, but one of the things that happens here with Iron Man is he basically initiates a kind of sonic blast, which isn't enough to take out Carnage and not even enough to separate the symbiote from him, but it is enough to again push this guy back at bay. But one of the things I want you guys to notice here, the best they can do is hold him off. That's the best they can do at this point in time. The level of power that Cletus has is just so astronomically high. Now, some of that again is due to the Iron Man suit as well as the Carnage symbiote, but one of the things to also remember in the Venom comics that we're covering, Marvel is elevating the power of the symbiotes as they exist in Marvel Comics. In previous years, they were just literally organisms that attached to a host and they could just do some cool stuff. But with everything going on in Eddie Brock's story, it's a whole new ball game. They're a lot more durable and a lot more powerful than they used to be. This also includes Cletus. And so as this fight continues on, you have this statement from Iron Man, which is kind of hilarious, where he's like, okay, we have to go with the nuclear option. And the response of Miles is just like, you can't nuke New York, Tony Stark. He's like, it's a figure of speech, kid. But we might also have to do that too, just something to keep in the back of your head. We might have to nuke the city. But one of the things that's going on is Cletus is obviously absorbing different people around him. Initially, it started with Kenneth Neely, the guy who was obsessed with Carnage and all that kind of stuff, and it's just been like a massive fanboy for Cletus Kasady ever since. The fact that he's absorbed isn't overly important here, but it's just to point to the idea that that's why you see like these different faces that Cletus is communicating with, because they're personalities that he's absorbed unto himself. The other thing going on is that where Red Goblin wasn't able to pull these Extrembiote suits off of the Iron Man armor that was being piloted by these crazy fans, Carnage does. And so what Iron Man says is, I need you, Miles Morales, to buy me like 5 minutes while he charges this EMP. It's no small thing, and it's a massive amount of energy, and it will take out the entirety of his suit's power core in order to pull it off. And so Miles does exactly that. The issue here is that with Cletus Kasady pulling every ounce of Extrembiote tech around him, right, that he's put into the city, that he put into the Iron Man suits and so on and so forth, extracting all of that unto himself, he's more powerful than he was before, which means Miles is literally fleeing for his life. He's just playing cat and mouse, playing possum. He's just kind of drawing the attention of Cletus Kasady from different places. Cletus literally wants to take off into space, go find Carnage, merge with a symbiote, and then slaughter everything across the universe that he possibly can. But the goal of Miles is to keep him here, because if that merger happens, understand, if that merger happens, you would be talking about a version of Carnage with a level of power that would be virtually unchallenged. No one would be able to stand against him. So the goal here is to keep that from happening, to literally prevent a series of events taking place where Carnage would kill the Marvel Universe. So Miles Morales holds his own to a degree, right? He's just like, Tony Stark, how much longer you got? And Stark's like, you're doing great, kid, just give me a few more minutes. And he's like, I don't feel like I'm doing great. He's like, but you are. Which, by the way, every time I read Miles Morales in Marvel Comics, I hear Shamik Moore. I can't help it now. It's just the way that it is. Let me know down in the comments if you do the exact same thing. But it's funny because one of the things that's kind of drawn on here by Miles is that under any normal circumstance, Cletus would just ignore him and just leave. But Cletus has an ego. He wants the world to see what he's doing. It's a really brilliant stroke by Cody Ziegler as the writer, because as most of you guys know, or maybe some of you guys know, I'm not really sure, when it comes to serial killers, they like an audience. They like the idea of being caught. They want people to know that they're the one who did it. Now, something else to know here, if he did not have this Iron Spider suit, he would have been dead a long time ago. But the suit gives him enhanced speed, enhanced durability, enhanced strength. It allows him to dodge out of attacks, so it is the only reason that he's currently still alive. Such as it is, Iron Man finally gets the time that he needs. That in this moment when the entirety of the Venom blast that Miles has, using every ounce of energy his suit has left, when it punches into Cletus Kasady, it's not enough to take him out, but it is enough to distract him. Iron Man comes rushing in, charges into the chest of Cletus, and detonates the entirety of the EMP at his disposal, which blows the Extrembiote suit everywhere. It just blows it all over the place. And it takes it off of Cletus Kasady. Now, the thing about this is when you get this realization, Cletus isn't really human anymore. There's no physical form of Cletus Kasady walking around. He and the symbiote are one and the same. This is a benefit and a drawback. It's a drawback because outside of the symbiote itself, there is no core target to hit, but it's a benefit for Cletus Kasady because so long as a portion of the symbiote survives, he will survive as well. And that's exactly what happens. That where Iron Man's suit is just completely and totally powered down, running on like minimal power, it allows him to basically look up White Castles so that they can go and get something to eat, which makes sense because when the craving hits, it hits hard. Unfortunately, Miles also loses the Iron Spider suit, but don't worry guys, he's gonna get it back. This is Marvel testing it. This is, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with comics, this is Marvel testing this out, right? It's Marvel saying, let's give Miles an Iron Spider suit and let's see how fans react to it. We all love it. We're all excited about it. He's gonna get it back somewhere along the line. But of course, with Cletus Kasady surviving all of this, it's only a small portion of himself, a very, very small infinitesimal part. But as those of you guys know, when it comes to the symbiotes, all you need is a drop. It can duplicate itself, it can grow back. This is basically Cletus buying his time, because ultimately, from what we can tell by the future solicitations, the death of the Venomverse, Carnage traveling across the multiverse, killing every version of Venom he can possibly find that's really going on this summer, that basically the two of them seem like they're going to merge. Cletus is going to remerge with Carnage, and we're going to get this ridiculously OP character. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Let me know what you think about the Carnage Reigns storyline. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.